G'day, guys. Oh, better turn that down. I have to pop on at a different time today. I've got weddings over the next couple of days, so I can't do my usual broadcast tomorrow. So I thought I'd just pop in now. I might put the air conditioner on because it's actually really hot. So hang on for a second. Yeah, so it might be a chance to actually have a chat with some of the other people that usually can't get on at these hours. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes or so to let people know that I am actually online. I'm not sure how many people will log in because it's a totally different time to when I usually hop on. So we'll just see either way. If you are watching later on, well, you can leave your questions down below and you can get into the conversation that way, because like I said, I'm not sure how many will be in at this time of night. G'day, Tony, how you going? Yeah, I have to, Tony. I've got two weddings over the weekend. So I've got one tomorrow and also one on Saturday here. So it's a Friday, Saturday wedding this week and also next week. So I'm going to have to change my timings over the next couple of weeks. So I didn't want to miss out completely with you guys. So I thought it'd be good. Good morning from Sweden. How you going? Cheers anyway, because I'm still going to have a beer. It's actually 4:36 in the afternoon here, so I'm not joining you for a beer at lunchtime today. It's almost dinner time. So if you can, obviously if it's morning in Sweden, you may not want to crack a stubby with me or a beer, but certainly if you're from the US, you've got no excuse, Tony. You can join us for that. G'day, Stuart. How you going? Hi, Greg. How are you? Simon's here as well. Hey, David, put my A7R3 pre-order in this morning. Woohoo! How exciting, Simon. Really lucky. I can't wait to see the reviews of that camera. I have asked Sony Australia if they can lend me a review unit so I can do some videos for you guys, but whether they'll do that or not, Sony just doesn't seem to be as switched on here in Australia as it is in the US. It's harder to get review gear. But I'll see what happens. So hopefully they'll get back to me. They have acknowledged it, so hopefully I will get one to actually do that. I'm also going to do a special unboxing for you tonight, or today. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet. You can wait and see. But I am going to do a special unboxing. I've got a new toy. So I'll see what you think when I unbox that. Doing good, David. If you don't mind, I'll gladly split your earnings this weekend. No. Greg's here from Texas. Mickey Blue Eyes is here. And Sniper V is also here from Texas. So we've got a few coming in from the US anyway. I know it's a lot later, guys. But like I said, for the ones coming in a little bit later, I've actually got two weddings that I'm shooting. This time of year for me is nuts. I'm absolutely crazy for the next 2 months, to be honest. There's no stopping for me now for the next couple of months. So it's going to be a bit awkward getting in the live crosses. So I'll probably have to do them when I can. And so the timings might change. Like today, I thought I'd do this so I don't miss out completely. I might do a live cross tomorrow, though, from the wedding that I'm doing. And I may even do one from the wedding I'm doing on Saturday as well, but I'll see if I've got the time. It just depends on how busy I'm actually going. I've got a number of team working with me this weekend. I've got a couple of guys that I've hired to do the groomsmen shoots because I just can't fit it in time-wise, and then I'm going to be doing the actual brides and also the wedding, wedding, etc. With another shooter as well, but I'll be doing that. But I've got another shooter doing the groomsmen for me, which is a good thing because it does make it so it's not so rushed having two shoots on the weekend. So I'm looking forward to that. Jim's also here from the Oregon coast. I've got stacks to discuss with you tonight, guys. There's heaps. So I'm really looking forward to going through some of the news and rumours. Like I said, I've got a special unboxing that I'm going to do with you today as well, which I'll do after we finish the news. We can look at that as well. So obviously, if you can, have a chat amongst yourselves in the live chat. I will come back to that at the end. So if you want to make sure you get my attention, just put @DavidOsa so I know that the question's directed at me. Otherwise, you can help one another. And clearly, if you're coming in later on, leave the questions down below and I'll always answer them. I always answer them personally as quickly as I can. I may be just a bit slow over the next 2 days due to my wedding commitments and over next week with my wedding commitments as well. Cheers! Woo! All right, so let's get started. I think we'll get straight into the news. So I'm going to bring up this little dialer box and then we'll get started. Like I said, any questions, keep firing away, guys, because I'd love to have you firing your questions there. And we'll get stuck into the news anyway. So let's go. So let's have a look. I've got stacks to show you today. So the first one we're going to actually look at is the Sony a7R is now in stock and shipping in Europe. So I think it's actually beating the US. Remember last week I mentioned in the live show that they were actually shipping and available in parts of China. Well, now it appears that they're also available in Europe as well. So clearly they're starting to ship orders out now. So perhaps the US may also get quicker than what you think now as well, seeing that they are shipping to Europe, or whether it may still be the 30th, which was the date that was listed down earlier. But they are saying now that that's shipping. I'm not sure if this mentions where it's saying. After China and Europe, it's starting to ship out. The camera is in stock at PCH store, so it was actually in stock there. And SAR Readers reported that some of their pre-orders shipped out or will ship this week. And that's from those areas as well. Wex in the UK, PhotoPlus in Newland or whatever, I'm not sure what that is, Sony in Netherlands, and also I think that might be Denmark, Calmet. It could be Denmark, I'm not actually sure, but it does look like the orders are now starting to ship out, which is a great thing for you guys that are still waiting on those pre-orders. So it's exciting times ahead. The next little article I wanted to talk to you about too is, this is related to the A7R III, and they're saying it's actually cured the Star Reader issue, and they've got some images on this site, and I will leave these links down below, but they're showing before with the A7R III, I think, and after, but they're basically saying that the Star Reader issue has been fixed. Now, I'm not sure why they can't fix this in the A7R II. It's a bit weird. I can't understand why they don't offer that as a fix. If it has been fixed, Sony really should address that with the A7R II as well. But they are saying here that it has been fixed, which is a great thing, because when I went to New Zealand, I definitely noticed there was a difference between the year I went before with the A7R II and the following year where I went, where it had that firmware upgrade. So something in that firmware upgrade did affect the star that I had, and it had that star reading issue as well. I noticed there was a definite difference between my star shots from the previous years to there was the next year, so it was a definite issue for me. At the time, that wasn't even reported when it was happening, but I actually said to my wife when we were traveling, I said, for some reason, I'm just not getting the results that I got the year before with all of my time star exposures. New Zealand, there's one spot in New Zealand which is meant to be, I think with one spot here in Australia, which is meant to be the best spot in the world for star shots, because basically why that happens is because there's so little population there and there's so little light. So it's meant to be one of the darkest spots on Earth where you can get amazing photographs. That was at Lake Tepako there. But I definitely noticed a difference. So it's interesting how they're saying that this issue has been fixed. That's a good thing. So I am hoping that they actually fix this on the A7R II as well. There's no reasons why Sony shouldn't be doing that. But you can read that article as well, and they're showing basically how it's been improved. So that's a good thing. Next article was Sony have explained why the A7R III has the same megapixel number and no body size increase. So this was an interview with these gentlemen from Sony, obviously from Japan, I would say. And they've basically said that they always listen to customers' feedback. Only a few customers ask for resolution increases. And this is interesting because I actually believe that, because I wouldn't want anything larger than what the A7R II gives me and the A7R III. That size is barely manageable if you're dealing with shooting a lot of these images, because it does end up taking a hell of a lot of storage. It sometimes is hard for Lightroom to process, things like that. So if you were dealing with these new sensors that Sony are rumoured to be releasing, 100 megapixel or so, you're really going to have really good computers and stuff and good storage to manage those file sizes. So they're saying basically they've had very few people ask to get a resolution increase. And to be honest, like I've said, I'm totally happy with what the A9 gives me and also the A7R II. So I also cannot really see a reason for my personal shooting that I would want to go larger than that. Now, obviously, if you were shooting landscapes or things like that, you may have a different opinion about that, but I'm just talking about the way that I shoot. And it's also that what they're saying here, that most customers don't want larger resolution. So let me know in the discussion here whether you think that that is enough resolution for what you'd ever want, or would you want to go for higher resolution? So, and we'll talk about that when I come back for the questions. But they're also saying that majority of customers requested different areas of development, such as longer battery life, for instance, and faster autofocus, which they've addressed all of those things in the latest A7R3 and the A9, obviously. So they've definitely addressed that. And even picture quality in low light conditions. So considering that feedback, we decided which way we should go for the third generation, based upon our customers or our Alpha A7R series. They're just saying there too that technology development moves faster than expected. So customers sometimes don't ask for certain things Sony can actually do. In other words, they sometimes put in features that the customers haven't even asked for because development is going so fast. And they're saying here, unlike the A9, so obviously the A9 is strictly related to a certain type of customer, they're saying that the A7 series is made for a wider audience, so male, female, young and senior. So in other words, the A7R series, the A7 II, the A7R2, the A7R3, etc., is built for a really wide range demographic, and that's why I suppose if you're looking at cameras overall, the A7R3 is such a good camera now, because it is a fantastic overall camera, which is a great thing. I know Michael messaged me on one of my videos I put up, and he said he tested the A7R3 when he went to Sammy's. He said that the focus wasn't quite as good as the A9, and the video wasn't quite as good as the A9, but overall, it was just an amazing camera overall, and I think that's what Sony have gone for, and they've obviously got it in that camera. And they've also said that Sony did decide to not adapt QXD cards because accessibility of those cards is still limited. Even though that's a Sony invention, they are very expensive. So they're basically saying they didn't include that at this stage because it's still limited. So perhaps the newer camera may have that in. If they bring out an A9S or something like that, they may put XQD cards on that camera. So it's going to be interesting to see what actually happens. And again, I'll put that link in the description down below so you can have a look at that as well. This is also a really good story that you can read as well, which is talking about the very first Sony A7R pixel shift was demonstrated by DP Review, and they're saying all the details are clearer and crisper. So they are saying that, and there's examples that you can actually download and look at. They're actually saying that there is a difference if you look at the images compared to what a standard image would be if you're not using the pixel shift. So clearly it works, but I suppose, like I said, you've got to be very careful where you use this, that there's nothing moving, things like that. But for certain shots, it's going to be an amazing feature, and it's there, you're not paying extra for it, so good on Sony for actually putting that in for no extra cost. And it's something that's just there. So again, you can have a look at that article and let me know what you think about that. Let me know whether you think that would be worthwhile to actually use. This was a really interesting thing that I found also. Let me just have a cheers, beers o'clock. This Synoptics, this is for the Sony Alpha A9 mount, but look at the ridiculous size of this lens. It's nuts. This would be incredible to use. I mean, you've got 135 at f1.4. This would be a gorgeous portrait lens. It would be stunning, but look at the size of that thing. I know it's shot from the front, probably with a wide-angle lens that gives it that look, but it's still going to be a really hefty lens. But I just laughed when I saw it, looking at the size of it. It's just crazy. Do they say how much that costs? I'm not sure they have yet. No, I don't know. But 1.4 aperture at 135mm is nuts. I would love Sony to bring out a 135 portrait lens as well. That may be one lens that I may get. I'm still not sure. I love the 85 focal length, but 135 is also gorgeous as well. If you could get a 135 f2 or a 1.8, that would just give stunning depth of field, which could be great. I'm burping again. It's beer o'clock. Another thing too is if you have bought the Samyang 35 2.8 lens, there is a new firmware version out for that. So if you have got that now, it's certainly worthwhile getting. They're saying it fixes an issue where fast hybrid AF is not working in 6 camera models when the focus mode is set to AFC and the focus point is set to wider zone. So obviously there was a bit of a bug in that lens, which now that they've now fixed. So if you have got that Samyang lens, please download that update. I haven't got any third-party lenses at all. I use the Sony FE35 2.8. Which I've got, which I love. That's a fantastic travel lens. It's also a fantastic lens for going and doing street photography because it's so small. I suppose it's the same as this lens, but I really do like using only Sony lenses. Now, there is a reason why I do that, guys, and some people have said, why don't you have any third-party lenses? Remember, for me, I'm running a professional wedding and portrait photography business. For me, if something breaks, I need it fixed straight away. Now, I can rely on Sony Pro Support to fix that for me basically within a week. So that's the beauty of working this way, that if I have an issue, I know I can report it to Sony Pro Support. They'll get a courier for me that day. I can then send it off and it'll probably be back to me within a week or so. If I've got one of these third-party lenses, I know that's not going to happen. They're going to have to send it to somewhere else and it might take weeks. So for me, I would prefer to pay the extra to know that I've got that ability to use Sony Pro Support to fix whatever I've got that could break down. So that's for me personally, running it as a profession. It's important for me to have that service. And I can tell you from that aspect, the Sony Pro Support here in Australia is fantastic, and it's probably the same now in the US and most of Europe and areas like that as well. So it is something you've got to consider if you're thinking about buying the cheaper third-party lenses if you're running it for a business. You just have to think about that. Another thing that we'll go down to here, Sony have registered another camera that should be announced in early 2018. So what do you guys think it will be? Do you think it's going to be an A6700 or an A7000 series? Or do you think it's going to be the A9S or the A7S3 version that's going to come out? So this is interesting. So they are saying that there is still a model number that they've found that the code is missing. So they're not sure what it could be. It may even be an RX camera. The RX4 or 5, whatever it is, the latest version of that is due to be upgraded as well. So I'm not sure, but it's interesting. So there is one that they're talking about now coming out for 2018. I'm hoping that, personally, I don't think I'd buy the A7S3 because it's just too expensive for what I do. I need a camera that's a good general camera for doing fusion, which is weddings, video and stills. So for me personally, an A6700 is a much more attractive A6 700 or whatever you want to call it, an A7000, is a much more attractive camera for me personally because I really would like that video and stills. It's like I discussed with you last week. I would be perfectly happy to have an A6 7000 that gave me 5 minutes of 4K 60p. Please, Sony, give me that, because that would give me enough that I could just shoot the slow motion when I needed it, and I would be happy with that. So if it's going to be an overheating issue, I don't care. Turn it off after after the 5 minutes or whatever you could give us in that camera, but I still think that would be a fantastic camera. I don't really need the low light anymore because I am now adding lighting into all of my shoots. So, you know, as long as I can run at 1600 ISO or 3200, 32 ISO, I'm quite happy about that. So I would be absolutely rapt if they brought out an A7000 that gave us that ability. I am really hanging out for 4K 60p. Yeah, I'm not sure what that will be, but that article's here. It's saying here that the model number, they've got a model number, I think, but they're just saying that it's still got to be announced soon. So it could be a compact camera, I don't know, it could be anything, but they are saying early 2018. Just this is an interesting article because I thought you might be interested in looking at this article. It's got an iPhone X and digital SLR have more in common than we thought. This was actually from CNET, and they did a test to actually show how good the iPhone is against digital SLRs, and you can sort of drag between the two. I mean, I can tell which one's which. The one on the left-hand side is the digital SLR, But, sometimes the best camera you've got is the one that you've got in your pocket that you've always got. And to be honest, for most portrait shots I've shot with the iPhone, it's good enough for what I'm actually doing in that. But this article sort of takes you through multiple different ones that you can actually look at to see. I'm not sure about their processing, though, because I think they should have tried to process them a little bit closer. Because if you read the article, I think they're saying that the digital SLR in the left here was processed in RAW. Obviously, the iPhone was JPEG, but they could have shot that in RAW as well and then matched them a little bit better in color, I think, to do a real comparison. You can sort of see the depth of field, though, is much nicer on the digital SLR than what it is on the iPhone. But I'm telling you what, I don't know what it's going to be like in 5 years. It's going to be interesting to see how far that they can push this technology. And then you can sort of see the softness that you're getting with the digital SLR on the left. Again, there's another one down here that you can look at to see the difference, what's going on. But like I said, if you're dealing with a camera that is there automatically, it's good. They're showing also here how if you blow it up, though, that's where you see the difference. You can see what it's doing basically to his beard. You're not getting that nice softness in the edge. It's giving you a quite hard edge. But remember, this is all done by basic software, so this is all going to improve over the coming years. But it's an interesting article anyway. Where they're saying it does fail miserably, though, is in low light. And that's what you'd expect with a sensor of that size. So that's another interesting article that you can have a look at. There's another lab test here as well, which was done for the A9. So if you are interested in purchasing the A9 or you have the A9, basically this is a great review, and it's done by PDN, and basically it's a really good... it's a really interesting article that takes you through basically what the camera does. Cheers. It basically, I think it goes through everything. Like it's going through what ISO you can actually use, resolution. It's got all the charts if you're really into that stuff. It talks about texture loss, edge contrast. I mean, it is really quite detailed, and it's probably only something that camera geeks basically are going to be into, because to be totally honest, I usually ignore all this stuff and I just look at the image, what it gives me. I mean, I'm not too much into reading all these charts to work out whether the camera is good enough for me. I've used this camera extensively now, and like I said, it's the best camera I've ever owned, and it's probably going to do me for the next couple of years at least. It's that good. But anyway, you can read that, and it's a really detailed article from PDN that discusses the Sony A9. Another really interesting article here too is it's talking about Lens Rentals have put this out. It's talking about what happens if you get your camera wet, and the interesting thing was they showed an A7S II. I think they've dropped this in the sea, because it talks about sea water as causing the main problem. And they basically pull the camera down, and you can start to see all of the corrosion that will appear all through the camera, and obviously it's really bad. What they're saying in this article is there's no such thing as a waterproof camera. That, if it does get wet, no matter how good the waterproofing is, unless you put it in one of those waterproof cases, it's going to cause damage, especially if it's seawater. But the interesting thing is, when you go through this article, basically what they're saying is that most places, they know apparently straight away the signs in the camera that will tell them if it's been dropped in water. And they're saying that most repair places won't even look at it if it's had water damage. They'll refuse to even repair it or even look at it. So it's really interesting if you read this article about what's going on. So you do have to be really careful. You can see here where you can see the water damage underneath that's showing the rust, basically, or that deposits that's come through from that salt water, and basically it's seeped everywhere and it's ruined the camera. You'd really have to just throw this camera away and get a new one. I mean, there's no way out of it, especially if you're dropping it in salt water like what's happened here. But it's quite an interesting article. That's one thing, to be totally honest, that I've found with any camera I've used. I've found, to be completely honest, the GH5 is the most waterproof camera I've ever seen, and it's incredible. The rubber gaskets and everything on it are just amazing. It's all sealed. The lenses are all sealed. I probably would be quite comfortable taking that out into a really heavy rain, and I think it probably would be okay. Whereas I would be a little bit worried with some of my Sony gear, with the weather sealing. I know I've taken them out in the rain, but nothing really heavy, and it's always been on my mind because it hasn't got that true weather sealing. The difference, if you looked at the GH5, for instance, I'll grab it and show you. The difference here is all of these sort of things all have little rubber grommets that cover everything. So everything has got all this real heavy duty weather sealing that sort of goes in, and it's really, everything's locked down. So the weather sealing on that is really amazing. So it is probably something that Sony needs to look at for future cameras, I think, is to try somehow to improve that weather sealing. But remember, no camera is weatherproof, and that's what you've got to understand when you're dealing with these cameras. You have to be very careful if you're dealing with water, because they can get damaged. Like I said, I have had mine out in weather, but it's always been on my mind if that was an issue. And now, to be honest, I think if it was really heavy rain and I needed to keep shooting, I'd probably just use the GH5 and use that and just not worry about it, because I think that would survive. But it's an interesting thing. So have a read of that article anyway, because it's a really interesting article. I found the weather sealing on the A9 though, it does seem to feel like it would be a little bit better, and I probably would think that the A7R3 may be similar. Just remember too, it's dependent on your lenses too. Some lenses are sealed and some aren't, so you have to be careful what you're using for lenses and stuff like that. So let's open. Oh no, I won't bring questions up yet. I'm going to do this unboxing before we go into questions. So I'm going to switch to another camera because I bought something today. Can anyone guess what it is? I'm going to say. I'd love to see. Okay, hit me with some guesses now. So see if you can guess. I'm just curious to see in the chat if anyone can guess what I've bought. I don't think you're going to get it. It's the typical geek in me. Saw this released today, and so I just went out and bought it. Even though I already have one. I bought this today straight away. Now I'm going to give you a hint. It's white. Does that help? I can't see anyone guessing. I don't think you can guess it. I really don't. Anyway, look, I'm going to show you. So what I bought today was this. So let me come over onto the other camera. So I bought a new drone today. These were released today. And I believe that you can only get them from the DJI store and also from Apple. So I went to Apple and bought this today. It's the Maverick Pro, but it's a white version. And basically I'm going to open it because I haven't even opened it. I just got Streets of Vancouver saying Sony Action 4K cam. No, I haven't got that. I've got GoPros, Streets of Vancouver. I'm using GoPros for all of my action work. I'm not sure whether you guessed that before. Ben Ashford said a mannequin. I love it, Ben. No, I bought a new Maverick. Now I have got this, and I'll just grab it and show you. Now I have got the Phantom 4 Pro, but the interesting thing with this was this thing at the front here has actually had, I can't get it off anymore, and I've tried everything. You can see the damage if you look at it, where I've tried to use pliers and everything to get this off. Because you need to get it off, because with drones you have to use ND filters. You really do have to use ND filters on them. And I can't get that off now to use ND filters on them. It just does not come off. Now I asked a repairer today, they're a shop specialises in DJI Phantom drones, and they had to replace, to get this off, you have to replace the whole unit underneath. And it was around about $700 or $600 or something like that. So it was crazy. I thought, well, there's no way I'm going to pay that for a drone that's over a year or whatever old, when I can buy a new one and replace it. So I've decided to just get a new one. And I'm probably just going to use this for a bit of fun and just do whatever with it. And I don't care if I crash it or whatever. So I'm going to just go crazy with this now. I'll take it into professional mode and just go nuts with it. So I will use it. The camera still works, but it's just that I can't use ND filters on it, and that's important to get that cinematic look. So I bought this new drone. The other thing was too, I have been, to be honest, because I'm grabbing so much gear now when I do weddings and portraits, I really can't take too much gear with me because it ends up being crazy. And like this is great now because I'll be able to put this into my normal slide-on bags, roller bags, and it'll fit in, and I don't need a separate bag because that other drone is so big and it takes up so much room. So let's have a look at this. I'll unbox it because I don't know what's in here. Let's see if I can get it out. Is it? Oh, I think I've just got to cut that. Let me just break this seal. Like I said, these were released today. Is there any more? No, it should come off. Oh yeah, there's one more there, is there? Yeah. Too excited. So basically, this is the unit itself. So obviously this is the Fly More pack. So I think you get a couple of extra batteries. Obviously and even the controller's wide. So the interesting thing is too that your actual controller is wide as well, and the drone itself is also a nice wide as well. Some people I noticed online were saying you won't be able to see it in the air, but I'm already using a wide drone and I never really have an issue with it anyway, seeing it. So the main reason I really want this is the difference in size. You know, if you're dealing with looking at something that is, I'll show you, the difference is incredible. So that's the main thing. And like I said to you, you all know that I'm doing so much video now and stills. So for me to be able to go to a wedding and have that in a little backpack or whatever like that and just grab it out and then film is going to be a bit of a game changer for me. And also when I go travel and stuff like that, it's a lot easier to take than pulling around that massive drone. So it's going to be, you know, really good. So that's all I wanted to show you, basically that. So that's the unboxing, and you get a nice case, and there's all extra blades and things like that. So that's what I wanted to show you with that. Now let's go to questions, guys. So I'll pull them up. Yeah, no worries, Tony. Nice to have you here, mate. So let's have a look. Tony said he was hoping that I could split my earnings for this weekend. Dave Clark's cracking the Cascade now. That's Cascade Lager. That's a Tasmania beer, isn't it? Or is it Queensland, Dave? I'm not sure. Sniper V pre-ordered the Sony A7R III last week. Can't wait. It's going to be an amazing camera. Like I said, I probably will get that camera, but I may get it sometime next year. I'm not sure at this stage. I'm still waiting to see what Sony release next. Jim's here from Oregon. Stuart said, I got A7R Mark II second-hand, courtesy of everyone upgrading to the Mark III, and that's still an amazing camera, Stuart. Like I said, I'm still so happy with my A7R II. I won't be selling that even if I do get an A7R III because I want that Play Memories hack that's there, and also things like the time shooting and stuff like that. Some of those apps I do actually use. Even the Smooth Water one, the Smooth Reflections app as well, is great as well. So I won't be selling it. It's still a great camera. Ollie said, not ideal making kids sandwiches for school while watching this. But I'll take it. Hope you haven't put anything inappropriate on them. Hello, David from Brazil, living in New Zealand. I love your chats. You are so funny. Oh, thanks so much, mate. Rad said, funny, I was just watching your A9 versus A7R III video, still deciding, almost pulled the trigger on the A7R III as I was saving $145 via Ebates with no tax or shipping fees for $3,054. It's a pretty good price, isn't it? I mean, like I said, here in Australia, that camera is $5,000. It's really expensive here in Australia, but it's not that expensive for what you're getting. I mean, it is still an amazing camera, and if you're using it, at the end of the day, it's just money, isn't it? Greg Gleason said, what would be cool to get before some weddings next week? Oh, that would be cool, yeah. Altric's here. He's got his A9. I've seen some photos that he's produced from that, and they're looking lovely, Altric. Gee, it's pouring down here. Have you fallen in lust with your A9 yet? Altric, yeah, I'm sure he has. That A9 is so addictive. Every time I use it, it's hard to shoot anything else. Like I said, that Sony A9 is the best camera I've ever used, and I still think even with the A7R 2 or 3 released, it's still the best wedding and event camera that's available. It really is. It's just incredible. What else? Sniper V said 42 megapixels is more than enough. I actually wish the A7R offered selectable RAW sizes. Yeah, I'm not sure why they don't offer that. I know Canon do. It would be a really good thing, wouldn't it, if they gave a small, say, 20 megapixel RAW file size. Would be amazing. Surely that should just be a software thing that they could fix in firmware. I'm not sure why they don't give us that. Cheers. You know what? I would love to see, David, an E-mount version of the A99 too, so that shooters who like a larger body can still utilise the benefits of mirrorless. That's not a bad point, actually. I think that you might find that the A7S3 or the A9S has a bigger body. That's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I think they're going to have to do something about cooling. The only reason why, obviously, the GH5 can run the 4K 60 as it can is because it has amazing heat sinks in it, and also it's a really big, robust body. If you're dealing with something like the A6 500 and also the A7S2 or whatever you're using, those camera bodies are so small that obviously they have a build-up in heat. And you know that's a fact because if you have issues with, if you think you're overheating, you can open the doors, and that was an early solution, opening the battery compartment and things like that, which lets the heat out. So clearly there is an issue with that body size. So perhaps if Sony are going to release a 4K 60p camera, they have to allow that, or they're going to have some sort of time limit on it. Like I said, I don't care if they put time limits on it though. Just give it to me and I'm comfortable working for 4 to 5 minutes. Most of my shoots are actually only 10 to 15 seconds. They're quite small, and if you're dealing with 4K 60p, remember I'm going to slow that down 50%, so that's quite a long time. So I'd be really happy for Sony to give me 4K 60p with a 4-minute time limit. Mel said they'll surely put XQD cards into the A9 Mark II, and I think you're probably right, Mel. I think that's probably what will happen. Because they really need it for actually getting that data off the card. And remember, even the A9, look, to be honest, I've never run out of that buffer, and it's always quick enough for me when I'm shooting. But if you were doing sports and you are really firing off images, you still have to wait for that buffer to clear, and it will be almost instantaneous with an XQD card. So obviously it's going to happen sooner or later. Ben said he missed the unboxing. It's a new drone, Ben. I got a Phantom Maverick Pro. I wish Sony had E-mount tilt shift lens. It's something probably they will release at one stage. But to be honest, you can always use an adapter if you were going to do that. You don't really need autofocus if you're using a tilt shift lens, Greg, because that's always sort of fairly slow, meticulous type work. I've done that with my Nikon gear that I had years ago when I was doing architecture and things like that. It's usually that type of work where it's quite slow and methodical. So you could just use adapters and use Canon lenses or whatever you wanted to use. David Johnson said RX 100 Mark 6 with 900 AF points and mic jack. Imagine that. That'd be pretty cool as well. Oh, you know what? I've almost thought about getting one of those cameras. I'd love them to bring out a 4K 60p, one of those cameras that gives you 2 minutes or something of 4K 60p. Streets of Vancouver, the forthcoming camera likely RX 1.3 with 4K S-Log and perhaps built-in software variable ND filter. That'd be great to have a ND filter built in, even if it's software. That would be really good. I don't use NDs though. I haven't got time. I just crank the shutter speed. Mel said if you want to do an A9R, that would probably be 55 to 60 megapixels or 80 megapixels. Yeah, and that's the thing. There's no way I'll probably be buying that sort of camera though, because I just don't need that sort of megapixels. If that was the case, I'd probably buy the A7R III and just call it a day for a while. because that easily has enough megapixels for what I would ever use. There would be a market for it though, but it's just not for me. Ben said you can see the big difference in compression too. I'm not sure what that was about, Ben. Rad said, I think the A6500 with 4K 60p and improved focus system from the A9 or the A7S3, but unlikely as I think the A7S3 will be complete redesign in my opinion to counter the Panasonic. And yeah, they probably do, I think, need to do that also to combat the heat. And if you're dealing with the other things too, see, not only do they have to give you 4K 60p, but if you're dealing with a high-end camera like that, you also have to increase the bit rate. The GH5 will do 400 megabits, which is incredible. So they also need to include that too. And if you're starting to talk about, say, 400 megabits and you're dealing with 4K 60p as well, you're really going to have to, say, have the heat issue is going to become an issue if it's in that same type of body. Unless they bring out some amazing new processor that runs that much cooler, which is also a possibility. There's got to be a reason, though, why Sony are taking their time with this. They're probably going to make sure that it's a perfect camera when it's released. It'll be worth it if you're into that. Just give me a 6-700 with 4K 60p Sony and I'll be tickled pink. Mel said, the way I look at it, they need to get the A7S III or the A7 II out in 2018. I agree. I do think that they need to bring out a camera that can compete with the lower-end cameras. At the moment, there's a massive step up. Remember, the A7 II is a really old camera now. I wouldn't recommend anyone to buy the A7 II. You'd buy the A7R II now because it is quite cheap if you're buying that now. But they really should bring in an entry camera that's the A7 III that's around that 20 megapixel, 24 megapixel size, that's entry level to stave off any competition around that area. So I do think they're probably going to look at that, and it'll have to be early in 2018, I would think. Mel said the A7 III needs to come out at most by July, August, though it would be happy if it goes before the A7S III. I think they're going to have to bring out a video-centric camera soon. They can't let people just keep jumping to Panasonic. They're going to have to bring out something that will hold people in. Look, to be honest, there's no way I would buy an A7S II now. I'd just get the A7R III. There's no way. So I can't see them selling many A7S IIs at all now. Nearly everyone, I think, who would be buying that type of camera would be getting the A7S III because that easily, you shoot up to 6400 ISO on that camera in video. Max Eurov showed that. It's fine. You shouldn't need to go above that. So the only thing that Sony can now really offer, I suppose, is a little bit better low light, but is that 4K 60p, which they have to offer in an A9S III or something. Mel said the A5100 is sorely needed to address the selfie vloggers with the AF speeds of the A6300 or A6500. Well, that's interesting. I really hope they bring out an A6700 with a flip-out screen. I'm so hoping that that's what they're going to do. I really do. I was wondering where the Corona with lemon was. Yes, it's it's here. Who was that? That's Rad. It's here. I'm having another drink. I'll probably have another one with dinner now. David, I would like to buy a Sony A7R III, but I have read critics about the colour science. Well, look, all I can say, Pedro, if it's anything like the A9, that is the closest thing I've seen to what Canon produces. Everyone say that Canon has the ultimate in skin tones and colour science. Check my video that I did comparing the Sony A9 to the Canon, and honestly, some of the Canon fanboys said there's a difference. Honestly, it's that close now that it's not funny. I think their colour science is now amazing. Now, I haven't used the A7R III, so I can't comment on that. But if it's anything like what the A9 is giving you, massive improvement over the A7 II. So, I mean, it's perfect every time, and the skin colour is gorgeous. So I don't think that's an issue anymore. I'm sure that Sony would have improved the A7R III's skin colour and colour science. Mel said Sony should also get a 16 to 52.8 OSS. That would be really cool too, Mel. Yeah, I agree with that. That would be really cool. Streets of Vancouver said it's a good question why they never replaced the A500. And I don't know either, Streets of Vancouver. It is interesting because that was... I can't understand why they stopped some of those features in the later cameras. It is a bit weird when you think about it. Mel said, yes, you can have better confidence with Panasonic versus Sony and weather sealing. However, make sure all ports are really closed. Yeah, I know that. And you've also got to put that flash cover on. Yes, you're right. Sony Action Cam 4K, people were guessing what I had. CJ Andrew said Maverick Pro White. Did you guess that before I said, CJ? If you did, that was impressive. Ben said a mannequin. Susie the second. Tony said, I love it. Greg said Apple Maverick, so he picked that. What else have we got? Tony said he's had to leave. Hi there from Brooklyn. Hi, Rick. How are you? Greg said, are you using the A9 at weddings? Yes, extensively, Greg. The main camera I use at the weddings now is my A9. I'm using that for probably 80 to 90% of the shoots. Then I also use the A7R II for some of the formal shoots. If I want something with the most dynamic range, or I need something for the resolution where I really do think they're going to blow that up massively, I will be using that in that respect too for weddings as well. I'll show you an image I just did on the weekend. I'll give you a look. Let me just bring this up because I'll just show you one that I did at that castle that I actually did last weekend. I'll show you the image, how it came out. This wedding couple that I had are really into Game of Thrones. It's totally unusual for me to have that type of wedding. Normally, nearly all of my weddings are actually based on more fashion type looks, and that's why most people hire me. Let me just bring it up. Rated, because I'll show you this image. And let me come back here. And I'll blow this down so you can see it. Let me just go to this area. So this was shot with the A7R II on the weekend. Let me move it down a little bit less. You can see it there. So this was shot with the A7R II on the weekend. You can see that they're both wearing crowns and stuff like that. Like they were really into it. This was shot at that castle. If you looked at the image, I showed that castle where I was shooting last weekend. This was just a sneak peek that I actually worked from the other day. This was what I shot with the A7R II. And again, I exposed for the highlights here in the background, knowing that I could bring all these shadows up later on. And this is the beauty of having that dynamic range of what the Sonys give you. So it was amazing. And I've had so many responses about this that I've posted online. It's incredible. But like I said, this is not normally what I would normally shoot. So this was a little bit outside my comfort zone, but that is something where I would probably use an A7R III over the A9. The A9 is really good too in recovery, but it's about a stop difference. So if I really need something with a massive range of dynamic range, you know, the highlights here as against the shadows, I use something like the A7R II. So I hope that sort of helps understand where I would be using the two cameras. Let me just bring this back. I pre-ordered the A7R III. That's great, C.H. Andrews. I'm jealous. It'll be fantastic. Rick said, any idea when the A7 III will be released? We're all hoping early next year, Rick. They have to bring one out. It's just a matter of time. But no one knows at this stage. Ariel said, ask for the mechanical tuner to make some threads in the Phantom's camera. Ask for a mechanical tuner to make some threads. I'm not sure what that means, Ariel. G'day, just made it. That Sam is here. I think that was saying that the A7R III is 2,700. I'm not sure what money that was. Dave Clark said, yes, just across Bass Strait, mate. So it is. It's from Tassie. So cheers for your Cascade. Well, I'm drinking the Corona. Already thinking about a second A9, Altric said. It's amazing, Altric, but I don't know if I'd buy two of them, Altric. To be totally honest, I think if the perfect combination is, like I said, I would buy an A7R III before I bought a second A9. But that's just me personally, because I love to have that extra resolution when you need it. The little bit of extra dynamic range is also really good. Then you've got the A9 if you want to use it for the features that the A9 has, like the insane tracking, the insane frames per second, the really true silent shutter, because you're not going to be able to do moving objects with the A7R3 because of rolling shutter. And that's already been proven, guys. So that's a fact. You can't use the electronic shutter. You would need to use the mechanical shutter. Now, I know you can get 10 frames per second with that, but there's a big difference between 10 frames to 20 frames if you need it. So both cameras, I think, are needed. They're definitely both needed in my business. So if I was you, Alteric, obviously that's your choice, but I'd be buying an A7R3 before I bought a second A9. Rick said, where are you in the RAWs versus JPEG argument? Tony Northrup thinks it's okay for casual shooting. The other guys thinks he's crazy and people should always shoot RAW. Mixed for me, Rick. Look, to be honest, anything I'm shooting professional, I'll always shoot RAW because I always want that fact of being able to use recovery if I need to. Remember, everything in JPEG is baked in. So that's the issue for that. So it's dangerous to shoot just RAW, just JPEG. And to be honest, the file sizes are going to be bigger, yes, but it's worth it to have that ability to do real correction if you need to do it. If you're just doing travel photos and it's just simple stuff like that, JPEG, but I never shoot JPEG. I always shoot RAW in every single thing I do. Even for travel photos, I took 12,000 images, I think, when I went to the UK, all around Scotland and Ireland and everywhere. I still shot RAW because I always want that ability to do what I want. I always want that highlight recovery. I always want that shadow recovery if I need to, and the full dynamic range of the image. You can't get that in JPEG. So for me personally, JPEG is a no-no, but I do back up to JPEG on my A9. The second card shoots JPEG, so I have got that backup if I need it. Oh, by the way, did I tell you too that the issue with my A9 was the card? It wasn't the camera at all. It was the Sony card that's the issue. They're going to send me a new card. So the second card for me, shoot RAW on the main card, the fastest card, and then it's JPEG on the second card. So if I did have a corruption on the RAW card, at least I'd have the JPEGs as a backup. So for me, it's fine to shoot JPEG, but only as backup. So that's what I'm saying, that argument. I don't understand Tony Northrup's thinking with that. I would not shoot JPEG for anything, but that's just me personal. RAW is crucial for micro contrast detail optimization, and you're exactly right. Why not get the best thing out of the file that you can? You may not always use it, but it's not hard to convert to JPEG later on, is it? It's not hard. Greg Gleason said, I use the A6500 for video mostly and my A7R2 for portraits, weddings, etc. Was trying to figure out if I should get the A9 or the A7R3 and get rid of the A7R2 if I get the A7R3. I'm just reading what you're saying. Used mostly for video and portraits. Yeah, so probably if you're not doing stuff that's fast, but if you are doing more wedding work, Greg, I would get the A9 over the A7R3. That's just me personal, though, the way I shoot. 24 megapixels is ample for what I'm shooting. It's just an incredible camera. Like I said, the A9 is definitely the best wedding and event camera that is in the world, I think, by far. It's the best camera I've ever used. If you're more into just doing portraits like in studio, things like that, the A7R3 is the way to go. But if you're just doing weddings and things like that, I'd be getting the A9. Agree on Sony tilt shift. Yeah, there isn't any. But like I said, you could just shoot third-party lenses for that if you needed to. Santana said, Tony Northrup is crazy. SD memory is now cheap, so there's no reason not to shoot RAW plus JPEG. And like I said, if you did want to shoot RAW and JPEG, well, then if all the images are fine, you could use a JPEG on the second card. But you've got the RAW there if there's an issue and you need to do some work with it. It has saved me sometimes where for some reason the flash hasn't fired or the exposure has just been wrong, and I have been able to pull that out. And you just saw the image that I just did then. Of that wedding image. There's no way I could have done that with JPEG. No way would I've had that recovery that I could have shot. So if I didn't shoot RAW in that situation, I would not have been able to give them that image. So that's a really important thing to remember. You may not always use that recovery, but it's there if you need it. John, hi John, how are you? Good to see you here. I use the Rockinon E-mount tilt shift, which is okay, and that's like I said. I think that's the way to do it, is to use third-party tilt shifts because it's very slow and methodical. I don't think you need autofocus on using a tilt shift lens. Altric said, I'm going to get the Samyang 35. Yep, be nice lens, Altric. EY, it's pretty nice, 24mm. Wish they had a 10, or is that the tilt shift lens you're talking about there? I bought a lower 12mm 2.80, not bad. That'd be a really nice wide angle lens too there. Greetings from Norway. Oh, thanks so much, saying he loves my channel. Thanks so much, mate. Streets of Vancouver said, by the way, the past couple of years I've picked up a couple of Leica lenses and they deliver truly outstanding resolution on the A7R2 and extremely reasonable prices. I would like sometimes to shoot with some of these vintage lenses and stuff just to see what type of results they give me. The only one I've got is a Nikon 35mm. I think it's a 1.8 lens that I use manual with the adapter. Beautiful though to focus, but yeah, that's the only thing I use. The only thing that sucks, and I have to be honest, the only thing that sucks with the Sony lenses is the fly-by-wire. If you're dealing with video, the fly-by-wire sucks. It would be so nice if they gave us the ability to also then... See, Olympus, for instance, Olympus on their Pro lenses have auto fly-by-wire, but then you pull the lens forward and then it becomes not fly-by-wire anymore. So you've got that choice of using both systems in your lens, and it's beautiful if you're shooting for video. Because remember, a lot of the video I do on manual focusing. I just like to work that way now, and once you get used to it, it's fantastic. I just wish Sony would give us that ability to be able to do that. What else have we got? John said, cheers, too early for a beer in Belgium. It's 7 a.m. Just remember, John, it's 5:30 somewhere else in the world, like here. You've got an excuse. You can just say you're drinking with your Aussie buddy. Streets of Vancouver said, the aesthetic tone of your photo is that. Thanks, mate. Rick said, was that a wedding? Or no, that was a real wedding, Rick. I don't do wedding model shoots. Like I said, 99% of the shoots that you see are paid shoots. I'm totally different to most YouTubers that you'll see out there. My shoots that you're all seeing, those girls have paid me to do those shoots, and it's just that I film them as I'm going. So you're not seeing just basically paid models or things like that. These are real people, real girls, real weddings. I never shoot fake weddings. They're all real weddings. So no, that was a real wedding shoot, Rick. Yeah, everything I basically post for you guys is paid. Unlike a lot of YouTubers that are out there, I'm running a full-time wedding and portrait business that does this as well. So I'm also running a full-time business. Now, for me personally, that's important. I love shooting. There's no way I ever want to become a full-time YouTuber. I may, obviously as it gets more bigger and bigger, I'll probably do more, but it's still never going to affect the amount of time that I shoot because that's my true passion. I love shooting. I also love talking to you guys as well, but I love shooting, and that's one difference, I suppose, with me. It's always going to be based more on using real work for you guys. So what you're seeing is real paid work. It's not model shoots. What else have we got? Jim said, hi David, g'day. I don't often get to see your live show, 6 a.m. here in Portland. I'm not sure, England. It is bad that I'm still envious of you getting on the beer. No, it's not. Join me. Like I said, it's 5:30. Just say you're having a drink with your Aussie mates. Greg said, thanks. That was a help. I'm glad, Greg, that was you got something out of that. Ray said, would be great if Sigma and Tamron make full-frame glass for Sony mirrorless. It'll happen one day, Ray. It will happen as the market gets bigger and bigger. It's just a matter of time before that actually happens. Mel said, I agree, the ideal combination is the A7R2 and the A9. The best combination mid-level is the A7R2 and the A7 III once is out. Yeah, and you're probably right. You could also say, too, that the best combination mid-level at the moment is probably the A7R3 and the A6500. If you had to buy that combination too, that's a really good stills and video combination as well. You can still use a full-frame glass on that camera, so that's not an issue. That's also a great combination too. And like I said, I've got the A6300 and the A6500 that I use in weddings all the time on gimbals, things like that, so that's important as well. John said, yes, it's beer o'clock always somewhere, and that's so true. It is. It's always beer o'clock somewhere. Dave said, hi, Dave, was tossing up between the Batis 25 f2 for the A6500 and the gimbal work, or upgrading to the Sony 55 1.8 to the 50 1.4. No, you need wider than that for a gimbal, Dave. I used a 24 1.8 on a gimbal, or I used a 10 to 18 millimeter f4 on the gimbal. Sometimes I even use this lens. At the moment, I'm using the 18 to 105. That's a really good gimbal lens as well. So you've got that full range. You don't need a really wide aperture lens if you're dealing with something on a gimbal, because you're going to use autofocus, and you don't want anything to be out of focus. So you would run something, f4 5.6, something like that. If you run something like the 10 to 18, that's so wide that basically everything's in focus, so it's never an issue. Just leave it on f4 and then everything's in focus. But if you ran an f2, listen to me burping because of the beer. If you run an f2 lens, you potentially could have something out of focus, and you don't want to do that. That's why I love the A6300 and the A6500 so much on a gimbal, because it does focus really well. It's wide enough, and everything's in focus. That's a perfect lens. The 55 or the 50 1.4 is way too long for on a gimbal. Joe said, David, give me the RX10 Mark IV. I reckon I would love it too, Joe. I reckon I would actually love that camera as well, if that had 4K 60p, particularly. Streets of Vancouver, for anyone looking for a killer wide lens, a Sigma Art 24 to 35 f2, use the Sigma MC adapter. It's really great for video stills on the A7RT. Yeah, Sigma make great lenses. I used to have Sigma when I had Nikon. I had the 35 1.4, I think it was, lens, and that was really sharp. All right, guys, well, we might just about finish for the day. Like I said, if you do have any questions, please leave them down below. I had to do this today because I'm doing a wedding tomorrow and a wedding on Saturday, so I couldn't do my usual live broadcasts like I do tomorrow. It'll be the same problem next week as well. I probably will do it on the same day next week as well, which is Thursday Australia time and Wednesday US and UK time, because I've also got a wedding on Friday and Saturday next week as well. I'll let you know how this drone goes, because I'll obviously use that in some weddings. I know I'm doing a fusion wedding next weekend in Echuca, which is beautiful. It's a beautiful location. I'll be doing some video there, so no doubt I'll be filming there, and I'll share that and let you know how I think that goes as compared to my Phantom 4. So it's interesting times ahead. Like I said, any questions, leave those down below. Please, guys, if you can, I'd love you to give me a thumbs up, because it gets more people to see me, basically, and also to see what I'm basically offering for all of you guys. I'm going to go and probably have another beer. My wife's in there cooking dinner. I'm going to go in half drunk, and I'm going to go and have another beer now. I'll be so much trouble. I'll just say you guys made me do it. Rick said, fantastic show. Thanks so much, Rick. John Winter said, haven't Sigma decided to start making in-mount lenses? They're talking about it. I don't think they're actually saying that they'll do it. They're just talking about those flange distance issues or something. It will happen. Take care, mate. That's Jimmy V. All right, guys, I'm really looking forward to my wedding tomorrow. Like I said, if I can, I'll try and post some images from it or do a live cross to somewhere there to show you what's going on. So I'll try and do that if I can. I always love to do that. Apart from that, throw some questions at me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So it's been great, and I really appreciate you guys popping on for a chat. So thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you all again soon for the next video. G'day.